Hello and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. Today we will talk about Nepal PM KP Sharma Oli's controversial remark just before his foreign minister's visit to India. Nepal Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has once again raked up the border issue with India. He has promised to reclaim, as he says, Kalapani, Limpiudar and Lipulek areas from India. Significantly, he has raised the issue just before Nepal Foreign Minister is scheduled to visit India. Is he then setting the tone of the discussion that the Nepal Foreign Minister would like to have in India? Does it augur well for the visit? We will discuss such questions in the agenda today. We have with us retired diplomat Ambassador Satish Mehta, who has handled Nepal affairs in the Indian External Affairs Ministry for long. And we also have JNU Professor Sheetal Sharma. But before we begin our conversation, let's have a look at this small report.
Just ahead of the India visit of Nepal Foreign Minister, the country's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has again raked up the issue of border row by saying that the territories of Kalapani, Limpiadhura and Lipulek would be reclaimed from India. He refocused on the issue which has taken relations between the two countries to a low some months back. Oli said Kalapani, Limpiadhura and Lipulek are located east of Mahakali River and belong to Nepal as per the Swagoli Treaty. He said Nepal's rulers never made efforts to reclaim Nepalese territories after Indian military forces were stationed in the region after the India-China War of 1962. There was no immediate reaction from India on the latest remarks by Oli, but earlier it has maintained that these areas belong to Uttarakhand and Nepal has no claim on these. Oli is apparently trying to shore up his nationalist credentials in view of the parliamentary elections slated 3 months from now. He dissolved the House of Representatives, a lower house of parliament. Oli triggered a border row some months back by making similar comments, after which his government issued a new political map showing Kalapani, Limpiadhura and Lipulek all controlled by India as part of Nepalese territory. Over the past few weeks, Research and Analysis Wing Chief Samant Goel, Indian Army Chief General M.M. Naravane and Foreign Secretary Harsh Singla have visited Kathmandu to help put the bilateral relationship back on an even keel. Nepal's Foreign Minister Pradeep Gwawali is scheduled to visit India on January 14 for a meeting of the Bilateral Joint Commission with his counterpart. Now it is to be watched how the border issues plays out. Bureau Report.
Now let's welcome our guests Ambassador Mehta and Sheetal Sharma. Welcome to the program. So I'll begin by asking Ambassador Mehta about Oli's latest remarks on the border issue. How do you see that?
I would see purely, or at least mainly, from the election that may take place in Nepal 4 months from now.
Right.
That's the important part.
Right.
See it like this. He has dissolved the parliament. While the matters with the Nepalese Supreme Court will know whatever happens. But if the Supreme Court holds the resolution as per Constitution, that it's as per the Constitution, then Nepal would head into elections in about 120 days. Well, about 4 months from today.
In April, yeah.
And for Mr. Oli, it's really important because this time he will be facing not just the other opposition parties like Nepali Congress, Madhesh-based parties, his party, etc., but also his erstwhile allies, both Prachanda and Madhav Nepal and Jhalanath Khanna.
Right.
So he has to burnish his credentials. And I would not worry about it too much at this stage.
But would you like to, are you suggesting that anti-India remarks are kind of vote gathering tool in Nepal? Since you have seen Nepal for long.
It's quite evident it has been. It has been in the past. I don't know if it will carry the same credence this time around because you see the last elections were held in the shadow of a new constitution and in which the Madhesh-based parties had felt that they had been given a short shift, and the fact that Nepal was always seen to be close, and there was a perception in Nepal that India is or willingly gets involved in Nepalese elections. This time, not at all. It is the Chinese who are trying to keep the government intact, keep the two parties intact, in which they failed miserably. We are not a factor right now. And I think that's what we must try and do.
So, but Ambassador Mehta, if we are not a factor, then how does Oli feel that making comments against India would help him in elections?
Look, he's not making comments against India. We have to be very careful what
no, I mean, when he talked that we had to reclaim areas from India, and he says that India positioned its troops in 1962 and nobody dared to claim. So it's all about India.
True. Which is true.
Yeah.
But what he's trying to, what he has done already, what he has done, has raked up the issue of Kalapani.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that the Kalapani issue was not settled. I mean, it is very quite clear from all the historical record. This is part of India. It still was a dispute between the two countries, and he's just trying to burnish his own credentials, his strong nationalist credentials, which was a formula which helped him win the last elections.
Right.
So perhaps he's trying to use the same formula of trying to burnish his nationalist credentials and show that he's a tough guy.
Okay, we are also joined by Professor Sharma, Kshitij Sharma. May I ask you about how do you see this Oli's comment? As Ambassador Mehta, you heard that he is trying to become more nationalistic and with an eye on elections that he is making such comments. How do you see that?
Ajay, I would say that before we discuss about the kind of comment that Oli has made, we have to understand the basic idea of having historical ties with Nepal.
Right.
And all of us know that Nepal is a very important neighbor, very significant neighbor in many senses. Say, for example, for foreign policy, geographic proximity, historical relations, cultural and economic linkages that are there for centuries together with Nepal. And it is said that, in common parlance, we popularly call it as roti beti ka rishta with Nepalis, and it's kind of a very special relationship that we have with Nepal and the Treaty of Peace and Friendship which was signed in 1950.
But that applies to Nepal also. They have a special relationship. They are supposed to have a special relationship with India, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Now the important thing is that since China, another neighbor of ours, has come into picture, suddenly the significant relationship that we have with Nepal undergoes a bit of change. Now, why it goes under change? Number one, that we have to say that our border with Nepal is shared by many of the states like Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, then we have West Bengal, Sikkim and Bihar,
Right.
So the entire area is, it opens to many of the states in India, 5 states at least. Now, since China has come into existence, and this is also because of two factors. One is the domestic issues which are there in Nepal, and another one is the international factors in which China happens to be one of the important players, or very important players, I would say. So, if from these two angles, what happens that one is Nepal is for strategic importance to India's national security because it acts as a buffer zone between India and China. And the other one is that it's in the middle of this Himalayan frontier. So now, since China has started flexing its muscles, China has a kind of different ball game altogether in the sense of encircling India from all the sides by making friends with the smaller countries, those who can be made dependent upon China through checkbook diplomacy.
Right.
And Nepal is no different than many of the other small countries around India. It's a size in the sense small in population and size, not significance-wise. So as you have seen, Hanbantota in Sri Lanka, that has been taken over. The kind of policy that China has in order to encircle India and have, its military muscle display. In that game, China has also become part of one of the important pawn of, say, a Mora that you say, of the Chinese foreign policy and the kind of strategic the game that China is playing with us. Now, as you remember that last week's crisis in Nepal, Chinese suddenly got on their toes, because there is a lot of investment, there's a lot of interest, because how much they can come close to India, if they have a government which is pro-China. And along with that, these are international factors which play an important role. Along with that, the internal discord that is there between different parties and a group of people, that is also determining the kind of nature of election and the results of that election are going to bring out.
Right.
So domestic plus international, many factors together, in which China is an important role and significant player. But Nepal and Nepalese leaders are also trying to project an international image in the sense that, okay, we also are assertive about ourselves, no matter who is the driving force behind that assertion. That's
Right.
set aside. But they are trying to project an image that they have control over their things, what kind of statement they make, they are an important player, they are assertive in nature. So that is why such kind of comments are coming.
Right. Ambassador Mehta, you mentioned about that this Kalapani issue is unresolved. But I may also mention that we have that open border policy with Nepal. So isn't it ironic that we have a dispute as well as an open border policy with Nepal?
Look, there are two different things. Bulk of the border with Nepal, land border with Nepal, is fully settled. Of the about 1800 odd kilometers, most of it is settled. Just the Kalapani, where the tri-junction takes place between India, China and Nepal.
Right.
And on the eastern side, that's where there are some border disputes. In Susta, the territory is in the occupation of Nepal. And in Kalapani, it was very clearly, all historical evidence is very clear that it's our territory. So it is, and it's with us.
Nepal says that since Mahakali river changed course, so it is now, the area is now under Nepal. I'm just pointing out something. You may
look. It's a question of where is Mahakali's source.
Yeah.
It boils down to this. Okay, and so far all the historical records are very clear where the source lies, and this issue was never disputed in the past. They would make mute noises, but it was never disputed, and it is now possession also. So I don't think that there is any serious doubt about where to whom the area of Kalapani belongs. That's very clear. But it has been made a political issue in Nepal. Now, right now, they are in the election mode. As it were, at least the Supreme Court doesn't turn the decision down.
Right.
Of the president. So everybody will have to play whatever cards to burnish their credentials as a great leader, tough leader, staunch nationalist, whatever. And this is the kind of projection that Mr. Oli had given about himself in the past. And so he thinks because it gets him some votes, why not do it? That's the nature of politics. I don't think we should need to get agitated. Number two, there are foreign ministers coming here to India.
right.
And obviously, with the foreign minister, a number of issues will be discussed. This thing would also be touched upon. Both sides know nothing will get solved
Right.
At this round. But it would get touched upon. So, this is good to show the tough guy.
So that is why I was.
That no, we are fighting for it. I don't think we should get too preoccupied with this. The fact of the matter is that even after announcing election, there are foreign ministers coming.
Right. So that is why I said that maybe it is setting of tone for the talks. But I also want
I don't even think it is setting the tone of the
Visit.
discussions.
Yeah.
If they had to really spoil the visit, why come?
Okay.
They have caused enough damage to relationships sitting there. Why do you have to come here? Knowing fully well there will be no outcome.
Right.
On this is very clear. I mean, it's very clear.
Okay.
So it's good to act up. We insisted our position. This is our position. We held on to the position. We came back, and that's it.
Right.
What more would you expect logically?
True. So, Professor Sheetal Sharma, I want to ask you, as Ambassador pointed out, that it's like taking a tough position before the visit, and maybe addressing the domestic audience that we have taken a tough position. What do you say on that?
Position on what? Can you repeat again?
I mean, Ambassador Mehta was saying that it's like taking a tough position to mainly address the domestic audience, that before the visit of the foreign minister that we have taken a tough position against India.
Absolutely. And I mentioned this in my earlier remark also, that some of the things are being done in order to cater to the domestic constituencies in which they have to now contest an election. The other important issue which we also bring into the discussion is that since 1870s the maps are showing that this Lipulekh and Kalapani as part of British India since then.
Right.
And the maps are showing geographically these as part of India. However, there is a kind of assertion that China is making, Nepal is making right now, that is for the domestic constituency. But now, why for domestic constituency? Because some amount of investment, infrastructure and economic development which is happening from China's side in Nepal has got some kind of consequences in the way Nepal had been historically linked to India. So in that case, there are apprehensions and suspicions from Indian part also, from Chinese part also, and Nepal has to balance strategically both, because Nepal is gaining from both the sides. They cannot at any cost antagonize India because it's landlocked. Much of its transport, economic partnership, trade and everything is happening with India. So Nepal, as Prime Minister Oli just said, yesterday only, that the issue will be resolved through talks. What he intends to say, the very fact that he says it's through talks, that okay, diplomatic channels are open and we are going to settle it through talks, and whatever the fact, data, maps and history is saying, that will be seen as something authentic and it will be settled in that regard. However, the kind of issue which has come and got inflamed over a period of time, it also adds a third angle to Nepal, India, China factor, which involves Tibet. And China does not want any kind of things to happen on Tibet border, anything which is anti-China. So there are a couple of issues which China is, juggling. Nepal, Tibet, India, Pakistan, strategically. And in all those things, unfortunately, India is getting entangled because India borders with almost all these nuisance creating countries and our neighbors. So that is why the issue has come into forefront.
Right.
However, we should not forget that despite the fact that there is a China factor in India-Nepal relationship, we should not actually, put our relationships with China at risk, or even somehow bring them at a lower level. So robust relations are required, and one important thing is that India should stop looking at Nepal purely through security prism, because our bilateral relations with Nepal are not just dependent upon security prism. As we were discussing earlier, there is a roti beti ka rishta, the cultural, historical linkages, religion and everything. There is so much of commonality. It should not, the entire cultural diplomacy should not put to risk just because of some strategic interest. And I'm sure that if diplomacy acts in its full potential, the issue would be resolved. Yes, of course, some kind of ideas, some kind of statements would certainly come out from certain political parties and angles in order to cater to domestic constituencies to garner votes, not much water in that.
Right. Ambassador Mehta, as we talked about that the India-Nepal Friendship Treaty, which is almost 150-year-old, and I remember in 2014 when Prime Minister Modi made a first visit to Nepal, he promised that it will be revised. Now it is 6 years since then. So why is it not being revised?
Look, the India-Nepal Treaty of 1950, the discussion on changing it has been going on at least for last 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay, at least.
Yeah.
And whatever noises Nepalese may make in the public, when it comes to discussing the specific issues involved, they realize that they'll be at a loss if this treaty is, if they call this treaty off.
Right.
And the treaty has the provision of any party giving a notice and calling it off. They understand that fully. But again, it's for domestic political compulsions that they keep talking about it. But when it comes to sitting and negotiating, there will hardly be any serious negotiations on this. There will be discussion, and then they will say both sides decided to further discuss it at a later stage, and it goes on. I don't think we should be pushing too hard. We should be pushing Nepal too hard to come to a conclusion on this.
So, but
And
so
Nepalese
are you going to?
Nepalese side would realistically would not want to change this treaty, because anything that is of interest to us has not been implemented or is not being implemented.
Okay.
And everything that is of interest to Nepal is being implemented. So I mean, why would anybody like to change a treaty?
What is that?
You get everything.
What is that which is of our interest which has not been implemented?
Look, national treatment of both of nationals of each other's country in other country.
Right.
So we give Nepalese national treatment.
Right.
Okay, the fact of the matter is that even today, the chairman of CBDT could be a Nepalese national. We have Nepalese nationals who rose on to become major generals in the Indian Army. Indians don't get the same treatment there.
Okay.
We can't go and compete in the Nepalese civil services. Just to give one example.
Okay.
This applies to industry, tax, and everywhere we have faced this. I mean, I can list a number of cases where we just don't get the same treatment that we give to Nepalese nationals in India. But we understand that there is a completely different reality in India. Our size is large, our capacities are much more. We can take care of it. We can deal with that. We can make those concessions.
Okay.
And we can't expect the same concessions from Nepal. And that is why I think the focus of discussions has to be when between good friends, when you talk of reciprocity, parity, it is not that you do for me what I do for you. I think the dialogue has to be, we will do all that we can for you, and you must do all that you can for us where we need.
Right.
Just to simplify, because in one of the discussions with Nepalese, I raised this issue. They said reciprocity. I said, we give so many scholarships. Do we want to give scholarship to India? Do we need it in the first place? Will you give? Can you give? He says, no. I said, so let's not talk of reciprocity. I mean, between friends, reciprocity is not that I do exactly the same thing that you do for me. It's very simple. I mean, a simple formula for great reciprocity in good friendships is that I'll do whatever is good for you, what I can, and you do likewise for me. It's not like for like.
Right.
And once the dialogue is structured around it, things become very easy, and I think that should be the focus for us.
Right. And how concerned should we be about the rising influence of Nepal? I mean China in Nepal. Ambassador. Yeah.
Of course, we have to be concerned about it. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. And once you are concerned, then you see how we address it.
Right. So are we addressing it?
And I'm sure we are. It's not that we are not addressing it. But you have to understand the Chinese capabilities and the Chinese resources are far greater than ours. And secondly, as I would see it, and I'm sure government is doing that, is that a smart batsman plays on his own abilities, not on somebody else's game. We don't have to start playing Chinese game then.
Right.
Meaning, we don't have to outbid the Chinese in terms of doing projects, etc. We have tremendous strengths in Nepal, and that's where we must focus.
Right. People to people.
Just to give you a cricketing example.
Yeah.
I mean, if both practice really can't.
I missed you. Please.
And so he shouldn't.
What was it?
And so he shouldn't try. He plays differently and he gets better outcomes, even though he's not as strong as Chris Gayle, or not as large as Chris Gayle, or can't hit the ball as hard as Chris Gayle does, but he scores better runs.
I missed
just giving an example of how to play the game.
No, I missed that. Please repeat that. Whose example you gave? I missed that. I think there was some breaking communication.
No, I gave a cricketing example because cricket is very easily understood in India and Nepal.
Yeah.
I mean, if Virat Kohli started thinking that he will play and hit the ball as hard as Chris Gayle, he will not succeed.
Okay.
But he plays on his own strengths.
Right.
Which is remarkable timing, executive selection of shots, understanding the ball. He does much better and he's doing much better than Chris Gayle.
Correct.
You don't have to be as large or hit the ball as hard as Chris Gayle does to get as many runs.
Okay, Professor Sheetal Sharma, as you heard, Ambassador, like Nepal also wants it to be open-ended. They don't want to actually resolve it. They may not be interested because certain things favor them. So what do you say on that?
Steve, there are two ways for India to deal with Nepal.
Yeah.
There are two reasons for it. Number one is that we see Nepal in isolation. India-Nepal bilateral relations, which must actually go on a higher note rather than coming down. Number two, if we deal with Nepal in the backdrop of closeness between Nepal and China, then also we have to act very strategically. So in both the cases, either India-Nepal bilateral or India-Nepal bilateral in the shadow of rising closeness between India and China, in both the cases, India has to be very, very cautious about its relation with Nepal. Now, India should not just work on taking Nepal into account just because China is after Nepal. No, absolutely not. We must work on, building a very healthy, multi-dimensional relationship with Nepal because it is going to have advantage for both the countries. As Ambassador was just now saying, there are many ways to engage Nepal. And if you...
Professor, we have to close, but as Ambassador mentioned that we will play on our strengths. We have our own strengths which China doesn't have. So what is wrong in that?
See, absolutely. We have strength, we have international support, we act according to international treaties, and the track record of India is very good in terms of negotiation, dealing and resolving issues. Look at Bangladesh-India border dispute, absolutely resolved in many good senses.
Right.
So we'll continue to resolve these despite the fact that Nepal may act or may not act under the shadow of China. That's a different story because this has to be solely treated as India-Nepal bilateral relationship rather than seeing it from a different prism. Then it is going to, yes, the prism is certainly playing an important role in deciding the way Nepal is going to take certain actions. But India must also understand that despite the fact that there is a kind of border issue, we must not create distances between the two countries because all these things can be settled diplomatically.
Yeah,
That's the kind of relationship that we have.
Professor, I don't think we are creating any distance with Nepal. I think we are addressing it maturely this time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, but
you are right, Ajay, in saying we are not doing it. It's coming from their side.
So I think we are
party to a solution.
I think we are handling it maturely, not getting provoked or unnecessarily.
Absolutely.
So, but our
we
time...
haven't got provoked even by Pakistan for such a long time. So, India has demonstrated good patience and integrity in terms of non-interference, non-aggression, all the principles of international order and global relationships. We are following them to their fullest, and similarly we'll follow them and apply them in India-Nepal border dispute. Also, it's a small dispute, could be settled over a period of time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
India-Nepal relations are very important. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will be resolved. But this is all the time we have for in this program. Thank you both of you for participating. This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with another important topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.